Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I am just about done with most modern PC multiplayer gaming, let me tell you. Now, in the last 3 years, I've basically upped my content regarding like privacy, security, and computer security, especially because I believe it's one of the most important things out there, you know what I mean? As a gamer, we get goat seed all the times by big multiplayer gaming companies out there, okay? It's just a matter of fact. Every time a big game comes out, there's always some douchey anti-cheat attached to it that just seems to stay onto our systems longer than it ever has to. Now, before we get into it, okay, any game that I mention whenever I talk about computer security is independent of the actual security. I remember back when I talked about Valorant, people were like, well, I guess you just hate Valorant. I guess you think it's a shitty game. I played a couple hours of Valorant. I think it's a fine game, ladies and gentlemen. But guess what? None of this is about the actual game. It's about the anti-cheat. So let's put our anti-cheat hats on and talk about another game. Now, this is a game, ladies and gentlemen, called Undecember. Now, I saw the ads for this on YouTube, and I thought it looked pretty good. If you know anything about my gaming history, I play Diablo, I play games like Path of Exile briefly. I like ARPGs. I like just clicking on my computer, grinding out sets, doing all of it, okay? Sometimes I like turning my brain off and doing that. So when I saw this game, I thought it looked pretty damn cool, and I was actually into it. Now, the time I wanted to cover this, there was a severe amount of review bombing. When I first looked at this, the actual reviews on Steam were all negative, okay? They were like mostly negative. Now they've jumped up to a mixed degree. But why were they negative to begin with? Well, because at the time, there were two big complaints with this game. One of them being that it was pay to win, which I can't really talk about because I haven't played the game to the point where I can tell you how monetized it is, all right? Like, obviously, it's a free-to-play game. Obviously, it's got some monetization to it. I really don't know where it goes on that. I really can't jump onto you with that. But when it comes to the malware and it comes to the anti-cheat side of it, this game runs NProtect GameGuard. NProtect GameGuard is one of many anti-cheats that exist. And if you actually look at the reviews for this game, like you click on the 9,300 reviews, you can see that it's got a fair amount talking about rootkit and mobile game on PC and pay to win. All right, get rid of it that way, 33 hours. And you got somebody with 1 hour who said, uninstall your game, go to C Windows Sys Wow 64 and delete GameMon.des. Thank me later. I don't generally jump on a hate train, so the shop is one thing. But I don't like rootkits being installed on my PC that stay on it even when I uninstall the game. I had to manually remove it yesterday after deleting the game. Can't support companies that do stuff like that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, last time we talked about this, there was a game known as Genshin Impact. It's a fine game. The anti-cheat that it used at the time could have actually been sent independent of whether you've installed the game. So there were people who could actually take the anti-cheat out of that game because anti-cheats are separate programs than the games. Usually what happens is you install a game. As the game launches, it calls upon the anti-cheat that it's looking for on your system, and if it's installed, it'll collaborate with the anti-cheat to protect itself and vice versa. Now, what people were doing with the Genshin Impact anti-cheat were they were taking an older version, a compromised version, grabbing it and sending it to other people. You didn't even need to have the game installed. As long as they had the anti-cheat driver, they could do some nefarious things to other people's systems. So again, one of the things with anti-cheats is I understand the need for them. I get it. Multiplayer gaming has hackers and cheaters all around. There's people who do a lot of fucked up shit on the computer side. And obviously you need to have some anti-cheat, otherwise you just have a laissez-faire gaming place where people are going to run constant hacks no matter what. There are literal super mega teams working on developing anti-cheats. There are lawyers that are getting paid 6 figures a year, all right, just so they can litigate against actual hackers, people who are running and selling hacks all over the internet, okay? This is a big industry, and this is a cat and mouse game that's constantly running. The problem is, as this warfare is happening, you and me and our home with our computers are the ones that are actually being hit the hardest. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself. So whenever I see games with anti-cheats like this, I always run them in virtual machines, right? Now, I know that I'm a broken record when it comes to VMs, but the reason I'm a VM advocate is because anytime you have anti-cheat that is this invasive, runs ring zero to the root of your computer, has more privileges than, administrator software at times, I always feel comfortable virtualizing it. What virtualizing does is it helps contain that anti-cheat and all of its tools within one nice, neat container. meaning that I'm not peeking into it and it's not peeking out. There is a wall of division that exists between us. So of course, there are games that have anti-cheat so invasive that they straight up kick you out. Now, for me, I couldn't really play this game. I saw that it had an anti-cheat. I installed it within a virtual machine, as you're seeing here. This is the, Kenny rig, where it's actually splitting up that 4090 graphic card between my host system and virtual machines. So anyways, I didn't even try to hide the fact that I was running a VM. It straight up knows all of it. I'm not spoofing anything. I'm not hiding whatever. It's all right there and dandy, ready to go. So anyways, what happens is I install the game, I decide running it, and lo and behold, it actually does run. I can choose my servers, I can do whatever I want. And in fact, the game ran pretty well. It was smooth, I liked it, the game actually looked pretty decent. I would play this had it not been for the fact that I was getting removed. There's a lot of enemies on the screen. In fact, from what I've heard, the boss battles in this game get pretty cool. So again, it took me to this character creation screen, and shortly right after here, because the game detected it was running underneath a virtual machine, the anti-cheat rather, it actually did boot me out. So here it says, illegal use detected, please contact support. And at that point, I'm not playing it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I get anti-cheat. Again, I understand why we create them. But when games are this brazen and they're trying to stop you this hard, it just rubs me the wrong way. And I wish more gamers finally realize that giving up any form of your computer security to play one video game is just not okay. Now, I've seen the comparisons. People are like, Muda, but you install mice and keyboards and various software, various peripherals that open up attack surfaces. And I think there's a pretty big difference between using like a peripheral and giving it some control versus a game that you may or may not even be interested in. Again, when it came to this, people tried to uninstall the actual title, and it seems like it still had remnants of that software sitting. It was so bad to a point that even the game company behind it literally had to release a separate program to help deleting GameGuard as an anti-cheat. One of the posts that I saw was from this one user who basically detailed the malware could not be removed when you uninstall the game. There's no uninstaller and there's no removal info on their website of the Korean company that creates it. So they basically told you had to go to the syswow64 directory and start deleting things once you had Windows turned off, meaning they had to boot into a Linux drive to find this driver file and remove it because services were still active as your Windows operating system was running. Not cool whatsoever. So of course, even when it came to the game company itself, they had to respond to it. We understand your concern, and after many thoughts, we made an announcement regarding the issues. There are cases where the NProtect game program can be used for other games than Undecember. For this reason, the security module is not being automatically deleted. Therefore, we are in the process of reviewing ways to delete the NProtect program, and we'll announce the details very soon. Now, again, they're right. There's plenty of games that use that specific anti-cheat. We're talking games like MapleStory. We're talking games like Cabal Online, FlyFF, Phantasy Star Online 2. Some of them pretty popular. But of course, you can actually see the game company right over here, NProtect Online Security. Of course, this is not something that I totally, fail to understand. Plenty of video games use similar anti-cheat products. There's plenty of games that use Easy Anti-Cheat, plenty of games that use BattlEye, unfortunately, plenty of games that use NProtect, and in fact, some game companies are so big, they develop their own rootkits or their own anti-cheats, like Call of Duty and Vanguard. Or, sorry, not Vanguard, Ricochet, which is their premier anti-cheat solution. Not like it does a goddamn lick of anything, because I still see hackers on that game through and through, but hey, that's where we're at now. Now, of course, I get it, and I feel like at the end of the day, it's still not acceptable. Microsoft even should be mandated, or they should mandate these game companies and these anti-cheat developers to forcibly remove their actual crap off your system once you delete things like the actual game that it's running on. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that honestly has wilded me out, and one of the reasons why I don't play a lot of multiplayer games on my PC, if they fail to run underneath virtual machines, games like Rainbow Six Siege, for instance. You know that I was a huge Siege gamer. I like Siege, and sometimes I'll still play it on a completely different system connected off from my main rig. And the reason I'm doing that is because these games have such an invasive, hook into our computers that shouldn't ever exist in the first place. And I know for some people who are like, I just want a fair and clean gaming environment, I get it. But as PC users, time and time again, we've seen some of these actual anti-cheats being exploited. And the fact that we are slowly being conditioned, like this is some goddamn fucking NSA op, where we have to sit down and just actually agree that this is how things are supposed to be going forward, is just not acceptable. You know, we're at a point where actually partitioning GPUs, virtual machines, could in fact gain some traction. We are at a point where these systems could in fact properly be compartmentalized, so we don't have to have them touching our host systems. If you ever wonder why I use VMs all the time, it's literally that reason. There is software that is so invasive, literally is malware by definition, all right, unwanted rootkitting, and the only way for me to even tolerate that is to give it its own little sandbox to play in. Shit that one up all you want, but not my core main system. That should be completely off limits. Of course, even beyond all of it, I think one of the reasons why this has become a bigger sore point for me is, as somebody that's an active Linux user, somebody that's basically made the switch, now that we've got things like the Steam Deck and a lot of these companies slowly embracing Linux to an extent as the competitor to Windows in the operating system sphere, and Mac, we're getting to a point where Linux users who are finally given access to play some of these like newer titles are slapped right across the face. You know, for instance, Rainbow Six Siege runs perfectly fine underneath Linux. The only thing stopping it is the anti-cheat in question. Maybe they can work their way around it. Maybe they can sit down and enable it. Who knows? It's going to take a lot bigger names than I to even get Ubisoft thinking about basically trying to make their game more accessible for everyone. Look, at the end of the day, me and anti-cheat have some history, okay? But when it comes to the actual brass tacks of the situation, none of us should ever be goddamn comfortable with the fact that this is gaining such traction. And the fact that even games that don't typically have PvP components, like Undecember, from what I heard, does not really have PvP components, the fact that they're putting game protections and like anti-cheat protections, literally so that they can protect mostly their online stores. Listen, the reason why these games don't work underneath virtual machines is because they're scared of actual people running it in a VM, accessing the memory, and adjusting things to their liking. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just to back out of it, I don't really believe you should install games that are this invasive on your system to begin with. And the reason I'm making this video is that I'm kind of at an impasse, all right? Like, it really is just one of those things where, like, that whole side of gaming is cut off. As me, I become more of a single-player gamer, not necessarily by choice, but usually by force, to adhere to my principles of computer safety, computer security, and it's one of those things that I feel more people should take seriously. As there's more hacks and computer breaches every day, you need to decide if playing one game for an hour is worth putting all of your security on the line, given the fact that the game you are playing has such invasive hooks into your actual system to begin with. Wild stuff. I'm surprised that we're letting it get to this point. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say, ladies and gentlemen. This is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am